Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today I wanted to actually talk about why there will never really be a second video game crash that's out there. Now, over the course of my years on YouTube and, well, years throughout gaming, I've always heard every year that there's going to be a fucking crash on video games. There's always going to be people who are against the idea of video games, and frankly, because of the oversaturation, it's going to die out. Now, there is obviously a blatant fallacy to that. I think back in the day, a lot of people compare it to the old video game crash. For those of you who don't know about old classic video game history, you guys remember that back in the day, you had like 75,000 different versions of Frogger, 80 million different versions of Tetris, and more versions of Pong than there were people on Earth at the time. And because of that oversaturation of the same fucking four games over and over again with palette swaps on pretty much the same systems, in fact, back in the day, you had more than just the Xboxes, the PlayStations, or the Nintendo systems. You actually had a fucking metric shit ton of systems to worry about. Back then, the crash was a little more expected to happen. For such a niche hobby at the time, and for so much oversaturation, it just didn't make any sense. Fast forward to today, we have a very limited number of current systems that targeted group of developers and indie developers are making games for. You have a booming video game market to the point where systems like the Switch are still selling to this day and age. Cell phone video games, mobile games, indie games on the PC are selling like hotcakes. You know, you have games that show that you can have an absolute minimal budget like Hellblade, and it'll still make a crap ton of money at the end of the day for that company in of itself. Gaming is stronger than ever. In fact, I don't think it'll ever die out. In fact, it's become such a well-loved, such a mainstream hobby that for it to really suffer a crash makes no sense. Though, one of the things that I was thinking of is there might be a crash for, I guess you could say, the hardcore type video game. The gameplay you're probably going to be seeing most of the times throughout this video is Rainbow Six Siege gameplay. There's a reason for that. I really like Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow Six Siege reminds me of the era where I used to play games that had a little bit of difficulty on them. As far as the context of shooters go to a personal level on my end, I really got into online shooters with, Counter-Strike 1.6, Halo 3, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, Battlefield 2. I got into shooters at that point. When shooters, when they went to the multiplayer side, they were very ambitious, they were trying new things, and to an extent, a lot of these shooters were still different than everything else. If you wanted huge battles, you would go to Battlefield 2. If you wanted this quick military modern style shooter with these kill streaks and these, mix of AI and mix of actual PvP players, you would play Call of Duty. If you wanted that almost perfectly balanced multiplayer, you would go play Halo to an extent, right? Where you would have to really calculate power weapons, you have to calculate how many shots somebody has used out of said power weapon, and you would have to really figure out how the spawns would work in that game. There were still differences in these shooters. Last year, when Battlefield 1, Titanfall 2, and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare came out, I actually ended up playing all of them. I bought all of them, and I only reached about level 10, 15 in about every single one of those shooters. I got bored really, really quick. Usually I always buy the Battlefield expansion pass every year. This year I skipped it because I just didn't fucking play Battlefield 1. I didn't even bother going through it. I didn't even go through the campaign, which is something that I could do if I was really, really bored, which I even beat Hardline's campaign, for God's sake. But you reached a point where these games just didn't fucking appeal to me at this point, alright? The games became so casualized to the point that they were just mirror reflections of one another. You want to play Call of Duty, you want to play Battlefield. At this point, Battlefield is just a slightly more teamwork-oriented Call of Duty, but even then, it's sort of slipping away to me to an extent. A lot of these games have really prioritized that casual streak more and more than ever before, to the point where you're playing a game like Battlefield, where in Battlefield 3 and 4 you had to put a little bit of effort and work with your teammate. Battlefield 1 is one of those games that if you really want to solo, I guess you kind of could. It's more aimed towards that direction. Not saying it's bad. I'd certainly enjoy playing Battlefield 1 whenever I do get to play it, and honestly I like the game. It's just playing the game, you have to have like 4 hours free for those operations. Call of Duty is just fucking space simulators at this point, and Titanfall 2 is probably the best shooter. Still, I haven't really gotten to play that game more and more. It seems like the actual online for it is a little less received than some of the other big shooters that came out last year. They're not bad games, they're just really, really fucking casual experiences. And a lot of the Burnout I've also been experiencing. I've been playing most of these games in the first-person perspective anyways. Some of my favorite games from last year, Resident Evil 7, for example, Mirror's Edge, I really enjoyed that. which one was the well, Mirror's Edge games like that, they were all usually first person titles, and it's because of that perspective you ended up playing what felt like the same game over and over and over again. When a game like Persona 5, when a game like Dark Souls came out, when a lot of those games with different playstyles came out, it was fun. It was almost refreshing. It was like you were playing a different game for once in your goddamn life. And over, throughout this year, it's sort of piled onto the same thing. Destiny 2, which is a game I still haven't beaten, I haven't even put the disc back into my PlayStation. I will beat it eventually. It sort of gives me that same burnout as well. It's like I'm playing the same game over and over and over again. But I look at the appeal for it, and the appeal almost seems the same as some of these mobile games that I sort of cover, to an extent. You know, they're very casual oriented. They focus a lot to the majority of the gamers out there, which nowadays are more casual oriented than people who are in for something like, say, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, games like that. Games where you have to really dedicate some time into, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have time to dedicate into video games, go for it. It's not too much different than people who have time to dedicate into movies, manga, anime, any other kind of entertainment medium out there. For the casual people who simply want to get in, play a nice fun round of Call of Duty, a rousing butt fucking of Infinite Warfare, by all means, it's all available for you. But slowly and slowly, I start to see that every single thing trickle down to this oriented play style, which absolutely drives me insane. I was playing Fallout New Vegas last night on stream. Well, this is like really early morning right now, but a few hours ago I was playing Fallout New Vegas. And now Fallout New Vegas to me is a really fun game. It's a very deep game. It's a game that it's a game that was I guess you could say a DLC-esque sequel to Fallout 3. Used the same engine and everything, but the team behind it really went in hard on the minute details of it, the karmic systems, the faction systems, all that kind of stuff, the quests, the level of detail some of these things would have, companions and everything. It was a very deep, engaging game. Probably one of the best Fallout games that I've ever played myself. Now, after that, after I streamed, I laid in bed, fired up my Xbox One, and played some Fallout 4. Now, I don't think Fallout 4 is a bad game. It certainly isn't. But Fallout 4 is that point where I almost felt that the Fallout franchise in of itself started losing a lot of those hardcore, a lot of those minute details, those things that if you were a real big fan of the series, had to sort of watch out for, and at the same time really found awesome. It was one of those things that made an experience deep and engaging, but at the same time you were expected to offer some form of effort towards understanding it is all but eliminated. To me, Fallout 4 is more of this crafting type casual wasteland survivor simulator at this point, rather than what I personally feel Fallout should be, after having played hundreds of hours of the third game in New Vegas and some of the original isometric titles. To an extent, I feel like gaming in of itself is sort of going into this point where it requires more of a casual understanding, and at the end of the day, it's not so bad. It makes it a more accessible hobby. There's a lot more people who can fire up a copy of Destiny, play the hell out of that game, and enjoy it for what it is, versus, firing up something like, say, Fallout and sort of getting bored away with what it's offering you at the end of the day. Something like the old games where you have to put some form of effort into. So I really wanted to make this piece and sort of get out and tell you guys what I personally feel about the video game industry as of a whole right now, and what I could potentially see as a crash. While the gaming industry can't crash because it's so fucking powerful, this is sort of sketchy to me. But I don't want to make this video too terribly long. Thank you for showing up and watching the video. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.